Hi, my name is Ruby Berheni, and I'm here to talk about my research project that I recently did about Williamina Fleming, who was one of the Harvard computers, which was a group of women hired by Edward Charles Pickering to do a bunch of star calculation, documentation, and gather info about those stars. So a quick disclaimer that I learned in my research is that a lot of people might think it's really innovative that Edward Pickering chose women to do all these calculations, but it's actually very sexist of him because he thought that was the only amount of work women could handle and were like built for. So just a quick disclaimer on that. But nonetheless, these women did some amazing work, specifically Williamina Fleming. And the reason I really wanted to go into this for my research project was because I just found it really interesting that a person had to do all the calculations a computer can do today in a mere matter of seconds, but these people had to spend hours of their life just trying to figure out how to even do it so that astronomers today could do stuff like that. So that's really amazing. But anyways, a lot of things in this research project really deepened my understanding, especially because in class we just briefly went over Harvard computers in general, and even more briefly went over Fleming and her discoveries of white dwarfs. I think that's what we talked about in class as her being credited for. And actually in my research, it was really hard to find things about how she actually discovered white dwarfs, like the process. That was a difficulty throughout this research project. A lot of articles would just give a very general view of her and her discoveries and not really go into the specifics of how she did that. And I had to do a lot of digging to find articles that explained spectroscopy and how Fleming decided that hydrogen lines should be what defines a star's classification, things like that. So for the white dwarf, the closest thing I could find was a quote from Russell, who was the astronomer who created the HR diagram, when he noticed a star that was very high in temperature but low in luminosity and thought that was strange. And then him and Fleming both did some digging, and they found out it was a white dwarf. So again, it was just kind of tricky to find specifics instead of just general, like Fleming discovered a white dwarf. But like how she did that was really important to the understanding of this research project, especially because, like I said, in class, the knowledge we went over was like very minimal. So really digging into like what Fleming did all day, which was mostly look at glass plates of stars all day. Harvard to this day still has the largest collection of glass plates. And Fleming would just look at those all day, especially because a lot of her work was with variable stars, which change in brightness and diameter. So she had to look at the same star on different days, and variable star cycles can be anywhere from a few days to like 50 days. So she would just glass plate after glass plate comparing, measuring. The magnitude of stars was something she did a lot as well. And something that really contributed to my understanding was the magnitude equation that I did in my quantitative analysis, which gave me a more deeper understanding of probably what Fleming would have actually done, like on a daily basis, is calculating, finding the things you need for those equations would have taken forever on its own, and then actually calculating it, which was honestly probably the quicker part of her day. So yeah, those were just a few things I went over in my research project, and I think Fleming is kind of an under-talked about Harvard computer. Usually we talk about like Henrietta Leavitt, and I think that's because Fleming didn't really pioneer a math equation per se. She more came up with the classification system for stars, which is still equally as important, but it's maybe less applicable because you don't have to learn how to solve an equation like you do with Leavitt. But obviously it was still very influential because today we still use that classification system. It's what was used when the HR diagram was created, which astronomers use all the time today. So it was really interesting to learn about how she really contributed a lot. And a lot of the Harvard computers were hired because they were astronomy graduates, but Fleming was just a housekeeper who Pickering hired and saw her intelligence and brought her in. So it was really interesting to learn about her specific struggles being a single mother and how she got to be a Harvard computer, and then what she did once she was there. So all of those things answered my research question really well of how she got there, what her life was like, and all the things she discovered, which include tons of stars, tons of nebula, things like that. So that is basically it for my video. I hope you enjoyed watching, and I hope you enjoyed learning a brief overview of what I learned about when I did a deep dive on Williamina Fleming.